Well, all successful people have egos. If you don't learn to check them at the door, some humility, you're not going to be successful.
Shmuel, thank you so much for being with me on 20-Minute Leaders.
Thanks, Michael. My pleasure. Appreciate your project.
Thank you. Okay, so we started this interview. I forgot to hit record, but it's great because it's part of this whole informality. Shmuel, we know each other from J Ventures, a wonderful fund that we're both at. And what I mentioned before is that I just get so inspired every time by seeing your insights and your motivation and your passion for helping early stage startups in and out of the fund. So just thank you for everything that you're teaching me through that great program. And I'm really excited to learn over these 20 minutes who you are a little bit better. So let's get right back to where we were. Shmuel, who are you?
Okay. So if I have to define myself, and I think I said it before you forgot to record, I am a computer architect. That's how I define myself.
You started with introvert, I just want to mention.
I would venture to say that while at the beginning of my career I was thinking I'm an introvert, well, all engineers need to be, I'm not exactly an introvert. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but at a certain point of my career, and I'll venture to say I was pushed into engineering management. And I was a chip designer, I was doing some cache controllers. I was told, hey, take a team, lead it, etc. And one of the things I learned is if you ask what makes me tick, I'm a product guy, which means somebody has to use the product. And when it occurred to me, subconsciously maybe, that I can do it with a team, it takes a village, whatever the cliche, better than an individual contributor, I continued as an engineering leader. Maybe a unique engineering leader, never left the technology, but never forgot that I have to trust people who are smarter than me. I'll take only small tasks, but I see the big picture.
You said you were pushed into it. What does that mean?
What does it mean? Okay, so long answer. How many in direction? I'll have to remember how many pushes and then how many pops off the stack. But came to the States as a young engineer, part of an Israeli startup. One of the first companies in Israel that was called a startup. I'm talking early 80s.
Wow.
And not going in who the investor. I didn't even know it
was all black and white back then, right?
It was. I was a chip designer, but we actually used chisels to design it, carving on rocks. Yeah, I can do jokes as good as you, but to the point of, I'm sorry, I apologize. You have the erase button. So came here as a young engineer. I mean, maybe another indirection and I climb out of it. It's not a rat hole. Technion graduate. I started to work at a large government military research institute. Okay, in Israel you can call it Rafael. So, and the reason I joined, I was third year in the Technion. They come and say, you joined. Was kind of the plan, hey, plans never happen. Kind of the plan, okay, what I'm doing there, which had nothing to do with computers, but it was pattern recognition, video analysis, etc. We had video at that time. But yeah, it will be my thesis and then maybe PhD. Anyway, I joined a startup that was doing a super mini, Unix super mini in the early 80s. Never looked back, came to this country kicking and screaming. Really, I mean, I just got married a couple of months before, we baked the first son, My wife had to take a leave of absence, and 38 years after it, I'm still here. But now going back, I never forget the pops and pushes on the stack. What does it mean push? So I came here, I started to work as a designer for an American company who acquired the Israeli startup with colleagues of mine, and my domain was whatever, doing the cache controller. And at a certain point, and I had no pretension, I didn't even know I'm staying it. At a certain point, push means my mentor at that time, and I use the term mentor a lot because if I'll ever write a book, I'll write it about all the people I learned from. Basically said, you should lead the team. And then it was, we'll make you a manager. And I was, when I say kicking and screaming again, the push was, no, I just want to write test vectors for what I design. I hope I explained the push. So somebody saw something, and
here you are.
He was right. He was right.
Right. Okay. So now fast forward. You've been an SVP at quite a few organizations, huge organizations. So talk to me a little bit about what is it? What is the role of a senior vice president of engineering? What does that even mean?
What does it mean? So huge means after the acquisitions. I mean, I have been part of 3 startups. All the companies that were startup, they ended in acquisition. Usually I didn't stay. The current one I stayed. Not going to ask why, but what does it mean? It means responsibility for delivering the product. I'm not the architect anymore, although I try to remain as technical. It means, you said that at the end, you'll ask me about, it means 3 things. It means people, because
You're already
cannot do it yourself. No, I'm not defining myself, but it means people. It means a project which has a timeline, nothing works explained, etc. And it means a product, which means working with product management, customers, etc., to define the MVP, etc. It's all about the delivery.
Right.
But when I say people, I never forget that an engineering leader, and I had the term SVP, VP, etc. It's really an engineering leadership is about people. And remembering that you delegate to people who are, I hate the term because we don't do a competition, smarter than you, and you delegate to people who cover for your weaknesses.
Right. Okay. So
none of us has all the strengths and weaknesses, but that's really the definition of the job. And between those, in those 3 startups, depending where the investor were, and 2 of them almost died, and I had to help redefine the company. By the way, when I say I, it's just a habit, but I remember that it's never I, it's us. But
Shmuel, how many people are you leading now?
About 300. I've led 1,000 before, but you don't lead them directly.
But Shmuel, you're defining the culture. You're defining what it means to deliver the product. How do you lead 1,000 people? 1,000 people, it doesn't matter if it's direct or if it's, or there's different steps to the pyramid. At the end, they're looking at you as the person who's defining the strategy and trajectory.
Is as simple as 1 word, maybe 2. And again, I'm not clarity. You have to explain what's the true north, because in order to get to a product, if it's an innovative product, there are challenges. You are going to remember that you're not going to, so you have to make sure you're getting into the true north. You have to help them realize where do you move resources from one task to another. When I say true north, think how a chimpanzee or gorilla moves in the jungle. If you watch him, you'll see he jumps from limb to limb, from tree to tree. He knows where he's going. My job was to make sure that we know where we are going, because at certain times at the project you don't know where you're going. Clarity is key. What really do we need to expect? Run interference, because especially in large company acquisitions, there is a huge contingency of people who are trying to help you, but they are not stakeholders.
Right.
Let's leave it at this. At the startup, it's easy, it's small, all the management team came together. It's much easier to do a project with 10 engineers, and that's how I started, and then grow to 100 and work in a large company. And last but not least, and sorry if I'm preaching,
No, no, no.
especially with engineers, be simple. Don't send videos. Don't behave as an exec. I was told I'm not the right exec, which is true. But apparently I do something right. But I am not a
Honestly,
typical,
it helps.
I'm not a typical exec. I don't communicate by long emails. I don't send long emails. You stand in front of them. You try to do some small coffee gatherings. Well, I can't now, so I do it at Zoom. I need to change my headshot because the headset is now glued to me. But back to what I was saying, they remember what you say. So say what you mean what you say, and deliver, because it's all about trust, in my opinion.
Amazing. And I think that's inspiring to hear at a time when, even in small companies, and I have the benefit of also seeing a lot of my friends going to all these different startups. And, here in Palo Alto, there's a lot of excitement over everything that's happening. And, even somebody who's in a leadership role in the tiniest startup, I mean, people, especially I think my generation, I think a little bit more than previous generations, enjoy the titles and enjoy the responsibility, and it comes across also within the workforce. I think, at least from what my friends are telling me, that why is my team leader of 5 sending me these crazy pitches and these a slide deck to represent a simple idea? Why wouldn't they do a one-on-one with me? Which is exactly what you're saying here.
And again, I am atypical. I mean it. I'm not saying I'm better or worse or whatever. That's my style. It worked for me. I can't tell you if it works for others. A lot of my colleagues are now corporate America. I use corporate America. I work a lot with Japan. So corporate worldwide, which is the admin sets it, and then there is a video and a Zoom to 100 people. I don't. But I don't, and I admit it. It's my weakness. I'm not good at it. I'm much better at one-on-one. The other thing to remember, and again, when I learned it, and that was my failure at the beginning, when I learned it, things started to work. Check the ego at the door. Forget that. Check the ego at the door. There was a period, I would say in the late 80s, mid 90s, that I was thinking I'm the smartest guy walking the planet because I can design supercomputers, whatever, and credit to friends, credit to my wife, credit to kids, credit who told me that, okay, I'm about to make you erase. My shit does stink. And that was quiet and education, and I realized I have an ego. Well, all successful people have egos. If you don't learn to check them at the door, some humility, you're not going to be successful. I mean, others are, but it didn't work for me.
Shmuel, and it goes hand in hand with what he told me just before we started, which was you look at the millennials who are coming in as engineers and you realize 2 pretty contradicting things yet complementary things, right?
Okay, so let me start at the high level. So they were born with computers. I wasn't.
Yep.
I never saw a computer until my 3rd year at the Technion. And okay, it shows my age, but I told you that I came here in the early 80s. I was getting my EE, and I had some big simulation, RF simulation in Fortran, and guess what? The Technion had at that time a 370, 168, and I had to program it on punch cards and go and submit the job and learn stuff like job control language. And one of my colleagues told me, he said, why don't you have an account on TSO? And I go, what's TSO? Oh, it's a time sharing option. Good, how do I get it? Oh, you have to study computer science. So basically I added computer science and never looked back. But now to the point. So I didn't grow up with computers, but I was lucky. Most of my professional fun, I almost say career and I hate the term, but call it career, was in the 80s and the 90s. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the decade where computer architecture was defined. And it gave me a foundation that I still use because I was doing cache controllers and I was a designer and a RISC processors, and the operating system was at that time Unix System 5 and etc. etc. I became a much better software person, system person, because I understood operating systems to a depth that only a designer of processors could understand. Now I say, okay, that's the advantage. And that's what I use now to abstract stuff at a higher level. But when I say that your generation is much better than me and I envy you, I struggle with the simplicity where you guys take microservices and combine it to Kubernetes and whatever and blah, 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 blah. And I don't say my cat can write in Python. I struggle with it. I mean, but at a certain point, I realized that I can help because I can understand stuff they don't, because it's so natural. So the foundation of how the processor works and how the operating system works, and I don't care if it's virtualized or containerized or in the cloud, still gives me an advantage. I hope I answer why I have both an advantage and a disadvantage.
100%.
But I'm a dinosaur, but I'm lucky that, but I'm lucky that my professional learning was at the decade that processors took a giant leap.
No, definitely. I think one of the things that I grew up with in my house, which was also, you know, I come from a house where I have quite a strong tech presence and great mentorship. And one of the things that I was always taught from very young is first get the foundation, really understand the foundations, learn the advanced mathematics, understand how things are happening, and then you'll be able to apply these things at an abstract layer on whatever technologies. And what I do see, and I agree with you, is that a lot of engineers today, they jump straight into Python and JavaScript, and today it's all commoditized. It's very easy to go and write a website or write an application. It's much harder to do the complex and really cool stuff, because that's where the foundation kicks in. So I completely agree. Shmuel, what are you so excited about now with working with early stage startups? So you've been with startups yourself as an executive, but now you're also helping invest and advise startups. So talk to me a little bit about this interest of yours that is over the past decade or so.
So working with startups, again, mostly at advisory role, and that means on demand. Yep. Nobody wants your advice unless they have, and it goes everywhere from, hey, can you look at this problem and use your brain to tell me? I mean, most of advice means what did Albert Einstein said? Doing the same thing and expecting different result is the definition of lunacy. So yes. A lot of time it's about sharing. I hate to advise. I don't give advice. It's basically wrong. But trying to use example and say, here is what I've learned, and that's on the business side, is the way I help. On the technology, only when I asked to do a deep dive. We talked about the foundation, and yeah, I agree with you, and thanks for sharing with me. I mean, I
Definitely.
didn't even know I want to do double E. I started with physics and math and whatever, but credit to the Technion, I think still now, but definitely at that time, the foundation is much stronger than, hey, here is a quarter and we'll teach you how to write JavaScript, and nothing against it. Again, I envy those guys, but
But at the
I'll
end,
stop here, right?
the really
Yeah,
cool stuff is the foundation.
yeah.
It's
The
just
cool stuff is the foundation, and that's what I'm trying to help with, and that's not one semester of learning how to do JavaScript.
of course, Shmuel.
Thank you.
We're almost out of time, and I don't know why I called it 20-minute leaders. I could have called it 30-minute leaders, and I would have won 10 minutes more with every person. But
No, stay on time.
I do have to ask you my last question. 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Okay,
The hardest one.
let's pick from 10. So direct, although I'm American now, so I talk American in business, but that DNA has never innovative, which is trying to, and passionate. I was told sometimes relax. Okay, the passion will never disappear.
Humble is my word for you, Shmuel. It's extraordinary all the things that you've done and you're still doing. Yet you're here talking with so much humility about everything, and it really resonates. So thank you for the inspiration, and thank you for teaching me so much through working together at J Ventures. It's really fantastic, and thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for what you're doing.
Take care.